Everyone thought that Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were great friends. Their jokes were hilarious. It was easy for them to get along. But it was all a show. When they made their last road movie together in 1962, things were different. Crosby was busy with his business and his new family. Hope didn't really care about anything. What did these two guys do to each other? Hollywood tried to hide a secret that holds the key to the answer. They were never really friends. It was always just business, and things were going to go badly for business. His birthday is May 3, 1903, and he was born in Tacoma, Washington. His father built a simple house at 1112 North J Street where he was born. As a bookkeeper for a brewery, his dad made just enough money to take care of 7 kids. His mother was Irish-American, born in the United States, and loved music. The family rented a house for many years before they finally built their own in 1913. This boy was born into working-class poverty and was related to William Brewster, a passenger on the Mayflower. It's hard to think that he would go on to sell more than 300 million records. The boy everyone called Harry would grow up to be Bing, which is one of the most famous names in American show business. He got the name when he was 7 years old. He read the Spokesman Review comic strip called The Bingville Bugle all the time. He laughed so hard that his sides hurt. It was a parody of paper from small towns. It began when Valentine Hobart, a friend, called him Bingo from Bingville. It was soon just called Bing. He always went by that name, but his mother always called him Harry. Not many people would have thought that a little-known comic strip would turn into a stage name worth millions of dollars. The family moved to Spokane in 1906. Because there were so many Catholic families living there, the area was called the Little Vatican. Not far away, just a few blocks, were Gonzaga University and Gonzaga High School. Both were run by Jesuits. Bing became an altar boy at St. Aloysius Church when he was 13 or 14. Almost everyone he knew as a child went to Catholic school from beginning to end. Even better, they got him a phonograph, which is how he first heard Al Jolson. Crosby went to Gonzaga University in 1920 to study law, the same as his older boys. But music was what he really loved. He got a mail-order drum set and trained until he was good enough to join a band called the Musicalators. He didn't tell his parents about it. After college, they made more money than most people could hope for. Crosby also chose to quit just 2 months before he was supposed to graduate. He did well in school and gave a speech at his graduation called The Purpose of Education. He was also very good at sports. In 1915, he won 7 medals for swimming and diving and played college baseball. His folks believed he was on the right track to becoming a good lawyer. He was instead making plans for a very different future. He and his friend, Al Rinker, left for Los Angeles on October 15, 1925, in a beat-up 1916 Model T Ford. They didn't have much money, but they had big plans. The trip was a mess. They went to Portland and San Francisco to see speakeasies and stopped in Seattle to try out for hotel bands, and even ran for a week in a theater in Tacoma. Near Bakersfield, their car broke down, and Rinker's sister, Mildred Bailey, had to come and help them. Everything changed after that accident. Bailey helped them get an audition with the Fanchon and Marco Theatrical Company. The company then hired them for 40 shows on the West Coast at $75 a week each. After a year, Crosby would be in New York with Paul Whiteman's important orchestra. Whiteman gave Crosby and Rinker $150 a week in 1926. People in the U.S. made about $25 to $30 a week at the time. But Crosby's drinking soon led to trouble. He was caught several times for driving while drunk, and one time he had to be brought to a movie set while he was in jail for an accident. Whiteman's risk could have gone horribly wrong, but it made Crosby famous. The first time they recorded, things almost went wrong. There was a mistake in the recording of I've Got the Girl with Don Clark's orchestra in 1926. The engineer made it sound faster than it was. The replaying made their voices sound funny and high. It was embarrassing at a time when a bad first impression could ruin a career. Crosby learned from it and became the most famous recording artist of his time by becoming very good at working in the studio. The group became the Rhythm Boys when Harry Barris joined in 1927. Barris wrote hit songs like Mississippi Mud, At Your Command, and I Surrender Dear. It was his songs that helped Crosby's success, but disagreements about money and credit made their relationship worse in the end. During this time, the Rhythm Boys went on tour with Bix Spider Becca, Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey, Jack Teagarden, and Hoagie Carmichael, who are all huge names in jazz. Crosby loved the improvised style of jazz, but he also took on the heavy drinking habits that went along with it. These ties made it clear that he was more than just a pop singer. By 1929, things were very tense with white guys. Their actions got them fired after King of Jazz, but they were quickly hired back for $900 a week on the Old Gold radio hour. They broke their contract when they joined Gus Arnheim's group at the Coconut Grove in July 1930, but it gave Crosby a lot of attention. When they left the Coconut Grove in May 1931, they said their deal was over, even though it still had 9 months left. It hurt some people, but it also showed that Crosby was ready to take chances to keep his career in top shape. Bing Crosby married actress Dixie Lee on September 29, 1930, even though her drinking friends told him not to. It looked like a great Hollywood match at first. The year was 1929, and Dixie had just signed with Fox Studios. But in 1935, she quit acting to help raise their 4 boys. Dixie's drinking got worse while Bing was away on tour, but Bing stopped drinking after they got married. She drank a lot, and she often passed out from it. There was a lot of damage. After looking at old pictures, doctors at USC thought their twin boys Dennis and Philip were born with fetal alcohol syndrome. Dixie's life went back and forth between being alone and being sick until she died of ovarian cancer in 1952. It was in May 1931 that Crosby signed with Max Sennett, a comedy producer. Along with Al Rinker and Harry Barris, he made $1,000 a week with the Rhythm Boys. After a few days, they quit their job at Coconut Grove, but Sennett cut the pay to $600 a week for Crosby only. People who used to work with him said he was dishonest because he stole their work. Later, Crosby made 6 short comedies for Sennett. The first one was called I Surrender Dear and came out in September 1931. They were big hits, which went well with his record sales, but he and the Rhythm Boys never got back together. His big radio break by himself almost didn't happen at all. On August 31, 1931, CBS hired him for a 15-minute show that paid $1,500 a week. He got terrible laryngitis after practicing all afternoon in a room with air conditioning. People thought he was drunk or too scared to show up for the second night as well. On September 2nd, he finally got on the radio and sang Just One More Chance. I'm done with love because I found $1 million baby. The show became a national hit in just a few weeks after it started. In the same year, Crosby ruled the charts like no one else had. 10 of his songs were in the top 50 at the same time. Some of them were Out of Nowhere and At Your Command. A lot of them got to number 1, and other singers said it was impossible for them to compete. When it became clear that Crosby could not be hurt, the fake fight of the baritones with Russ Columbo ended quickly. His record sales during the Great Depression were so good that engineer Steve Hoffman later said that Crosby's deal with Decca founder Jack Kapp to sell singles for 35 cents saved the whole record business from going out of business. Crosby played the lead role in the 1932 comedy The Big Broadcast, which was based on the real-life problems he had with radio. Because of how well the movie did, there were 3 more movies every year, a weekly 1-hour radio show, and a lot of traveling. In today's money, the work made him millions, but it tired him out. He used drugs and alcohol to keep going, and Dixie's drinking got worse when he wasn't around for a long time. Late in 1934, Crosby made a deal with Jack Kapp at Decca Records that would go down in history. In 1933, only 10 million records were sold, down from 110 million in 1921, and most record makers wouldn't lower their prices. Cap came up with the idea to sell singles for 35 cents and switch from flat fees to profits. Crosby agreed with this. During the Great Depression, this brave move made music more cheap and set up the royalty system that is still used today. On July 13th that same year, Crosby and Dixie had twins named Dennis Michael and Philip Lang. His work was taking off, but he didn't have much time to spend at home. Dixie had to deal with the stress of having kids and her drinking problem at the same time. Both twins went into show business like their father, but they had their own problems. Dennis took his own life when he was 56 years old, in 1991. Philip had a heart attack and died in 2004. Crosby took over NBC's Kraft Music Hall from Paul Whiteman on January 7, 1936. The show moved from New York to Hollywood. It was one of the longest-running radio star shows, going on until 1946. It was a hit because it had music, comedy, and Crosby's easygoing style. It also let him work in both movies and radio. Crosby held the first Crosby Pro-Am golf tournament at Rancho Santa Fe Golf Club in February 1937. His own $3,000 was put up for the pros because sponsor money was hard to come by during the Depression. Golf greats like Sam Snead, who won with a score of 68, played with stars like Fred Astaire and Alan Hale. It turned into the well-known AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. In 1939, Crosby had 24 different songs that made it to the top of the charts, which was a new record for him. His music filled the airwaves, making it hard for his competitors to get airplay. And that was the end of his first 5 years with Decca. It set the tone for his rule through the 1940s. The first time people saw Bing Crosby and Bob Hope together on screen was in Road to Singapore, which came out on March 13, 1940, at the Paramount Theater in New York City. The movie was a huge hit right away, and it was the start of one of Hollywood's most popular film series. Still, the partnership almost never took place. Road to Mandalay was the first name the idea was given to Fred MacMurray and Jack Oakey, to Gracie Allen and George Burns as Beach of Dream. Paramount put the two radio foes together only after both pairs had turned it down. The movie was shot from October 2, 1939 to December 1939. Scenes set in the woods were filmed at the Los Angeles County Arboretum. They seemed to have natural chemistry, but they had worked together in vaudeville years before, so the pairing was more planned than random. As it turned out, the movie was one of the 17 highest-grossing flops of 1940 in the United States. After 5 years, Crosby made history. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor on March 15, 1945, for his part as Father Chuck O'Malley in Going My Way. This made him the first professional singer to win the award. The movie won 7 of the 10 awards it was nominated for, including Best Picture. Crosby was almost late for the event. When word got to him, he was on the golf course, not wearing his toupee and wearing normal clothes. His mom told him that he would never hear the end of it. He was pushed to hurry to Grumman's Chinese Theater if he skipped. The award was given to him by Gary Cooper. Crosby made a joke that he would be shocked if I won the Kentucky Derby. He actually didn't want to play the part at first because he didn't feel comfortable playing a priest. Still, it was the turning point in his playing career and helped him become Hollywood's biggest star. From 1944 to 1948, Crosby was the best player in the world. 5 years in a row, no other star had ever been the biggest draw at the movies. His best year was 1946, when 3 of the top 5 movies that year were his: Blue Skies and Road to Utopia, The Bells of St. Mary's, and Blue Skies made $8 million. Just renting those 3 out brought in $18 million. Ingrid Bergman made more money that year than he did, but only because her 4 movies made a total of $21.75 million. 1946 was Hollywood's best year ever in terms of making money. 19 movies made over $4 million each, which was a record at the time. Between 1932 and 1972, Crosby was in 55 movies, and an amazing 29 of them made it to the top 10 in their year of release. By 1948, He was so well known that not many people could beat him. Polls in the United States that year put him above Jackie Robinson and even Pope Pius XII as the most respected person in the world. His music was played everywhere. According to Music Digest, that more than half of the 80,000 hours of taped music played on U.S. radio every week were his songs. Yank magazine said he did more than anyone else to boost the spirit of soldiers during World War II, and he raised $14.5 million in war bonds. He had sold 200 million songs by 1960. He was the biggest star in movies, radio, and music all at the same time. No one else has ever been as popular in all three areas. But the love hid a terrible truth about his private life that he worked hard to keep from everyone. It had been years since that difference showed up. He was called Hollywood's most typical father by the press in 1937, which seems horribly ironic now. Crosby wasn't always at home, and when he was a strict, cold parent. His marriage to Dixie Lee, which began in 1930, was tense because she was an alcoholic. Died in 1952 at the age of 42 from ovarian cancer. One of their 4 kids became an alcoholic as an adult. In 1989 and 1991, Lindsay and Dennis were the 2 who killed themselves. The eldest, Gary Crosby, wrote in his 1983 autobiography, Going My Own Way, that their home life was marked by fear, control, and mental distance. On screen, Crosby played caring, loving dads, but his own kids had deep emotional wounds and a history of pain from their childhood that showed in their acting. It looked like Bing Crosby's life was smooth on the outside, but there were secrets, risks, and goals hidden behind the music and charm. She was 22 years old and an actress named Joan Caulfield. They started dating while they were making Duffy's Tavern in late 1944. It wasn't a quiet hookup. By 1945, their friendship was strong enough for people to notice. Actress Patricia Neal later talked about how Joan felt when she loved a famous older married man like Gary Cooper. The couple went to the theater, the opera, and fancy dinners in New York, as shown in FBI files and even the diaries of 2 sisters who followed them around. Their relationship was clear, even though Joan's mother came along sometimes. Paramount even announced 3 more movies for the 2 of them before their first ones came out. One more thing that Crosby did in his double life was gamble. According to FBI records, he owed a lot of money to people with ties to the mob in 1930 and even paid one gangster $10,000. He got death threats and demands for $6,000, including one note full of hate and threats of violence. His love of gambling got him and Bob Hope into an illegal gaming den in Burbank, where both guys were quietly let go while 100 other people were being arrested. He sometimes didn't have enough money to pay his bills and had to borrow from friends like Frank Sinatra. Crosby did something in 1948 that would change the entertainment business. He gave Ampex a $50,000 check with no note, which they used to make the first magnetic tape recorder that could be used. In present-day money, that's $1.1 million. He could pre-record radio shows, fix mistakes, and have more time for traveling, gaming, and hanging out with friends thanks to the technology. He got the exclusive rights to sell Ampex recorders and 3M tape west of the Mississippi. This made him a lot of money from the technology he helped create. He had a hard time at home with his first wife, Dixie Lee. During their marriage, she struggled with drinking and almost died in January 1945 after what looked like an overdose. The cancer took her life on November 1, 1952, just 3 days before her 43rd birthday. In the end, doctors thought their twin sons might have had fetal alcohol syndrome. Crosby even thought about getting a divorce from her in 1941 because she drank so much. But her death ended a difficult marriage that was hurting his reputation. There were also times when his ties were risky. FBI files talk about a time when Crosby lost it at a nightclub after drinking all night with crooks. 2 armed men held him down, and other men put a witness in a car, tied him, drove fast, and beat him. They knew about his relationships with mobsters and how often he paid them back, and J. Edgar Hoover personally watched what he did. Crosby met Katharine Grant, who was 23 years old at the time, while she was interviewing him for White Christmas in 1954. He was 54 years old. They got married in 1957 after she became a Catholic. They had 3 kids, and each of them became famous in playing or sports. In later interviews, Katharine talked about how hard it was to be married to someone with traditional values in a time when things were changing. At the same time, she was working on her film business. Crosby became rich through businesses he ran besides music and movies. In 1946, he bought a 25% stake in the Pittsburgh Pirates. He also owned TV stations in Los Angeles and Portland and set up satellites near the school where he went to school. His bets on horse races and other forms of entertainment brought in even more money. His forward-thinking attitude even stretched to making TV shows. His company showed off the first videotape recording device on November 11, 1951. The first version was fuzzy, but by 1952 it was clear enough to amaze the press. Crosby knew that it would be worth it for decades to own his shows and be able to record them however he wanted. It did happen. Even his well-known partnership with Bob Hope ended in the end. By the time they worked together on the road to Hong Kong in 1962, their friendship had turned into a business relationship. Dorothy Lamour didn't get much attention. The jokes seemed like they were written down, and the movie lost its easy fun. For Crosby, things had changed. The man who sang White Christmas to millions of people was now just as focused on his business, his new family, and keeping up the well-crafted image that hid the chaos going on behind the scenes. From 1960 to 1977, Bing Crosby had a tight routine for his oldest son, Gary. That made you look bad and was mean. Gary had to step on the scales in front of his cold father every week. If Gary didn't like the results, he was taken straight to his dad's office and whipped. Crosby did more than just punish people privately. He called Gary things like "my fat-assed kid," "bucket butt," and "satchel ass" in front of other people. Gary later said that his father went crazy because he had a big behind as a child. At the end of each weigh-in, Gary would cry and he would connect food with shame. He will be in pain for all of his days. The harm lasted for decades, making his eating disorders worse and destroying his confidence. Fear ran through the Crosby home. There was always a risk of violence for the 4 boys. Gary remembered that when his dad got home at 6 o'clock, he would hear right away what Gary had done. Then he was hit until he bled. He was pinned down, whipped, and his pants were pulled down. Crosby was always in charge. He was cool, almost like a machine. The penalty got worse over time. He switched from belts to canes. He hit Gary 13 times with the cane while holding it like a baseball bat. Mistakes of any size could make you look bad in public. The kids sometimes had to sleep with their clothes around their necks. A penalty that their dad made fun of and called the Crosby Lavalier. Summed it up well. It was us who got licked second after him. Of his 4 kids from his first marriage, all 4 became drunk as adults. Divorce had caused their mother, Dixie Lee, to die at age 41 in 1952. The boys went in the same direction. Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay all drank a lot to forget about how painful their childhoods were. 2 of them had terrible things happen after drinking. He killed himself in 1989 when he was 51 years old. Dennis did the same thing when he was 56 years old in 1991. Philip died of a heart attack in 1994. It is thought that he had fetal alcohol syndrome. Gary finally got help, joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and talked about his problem in public before he died at age 62 of lung cancer. The shadow of their childhood followed them all the time. Crosby stayed emotionally distant from his boys, even as they struggled with drug abuse and depression. Gary said that getting in touch with him was like talking to a mop. Crosby didn't give them love. Instead, he gave them money rules. He set up trust funds that they couldn't get to until they turned 65. Philip once said, "My dad wondered, what kind of trouble will they get into then?" They couldn't keep steady jobs, so they lived off of regular checks from their mother's trust fund. They were dependent on each other and knew who was in charge because of the setup, even though Dennis and Lindsay's lives were falling apart. Crosby was still the cold person they had feared as kids. Seasons was Crosby's last album. It was taped over 3 days in London in September 1977. It would come out after he died with the title The Closing Chapter. He had a 2-week run at the London Palladium that sold out early in October. Then his last show, which was in Brighton on October 10th. He cut 8 songs and did an interview with the Gordon Rose Orchestra for BBC just 3 days before he died. People who heard it didn't know it was the end of a 50-year career. He took a plane to Madrid on October 13th for a long weekend of shooting and golf. He played 18 rounds with champion Manuel Pinheiro at La Moraleja golf course the next day. Crosby was having a great time and even sang "Strangers in the Night" to the people working on the 9th hole. Having just won the match by 1 shot, he went to the clubhouse and said his last words. "Guys, that was a great round of golf. I think we should get a Coca-Cola." He passed out and died right away from a heart attack 20 yards from the door. He was 74 years old. His wife later said it was the best way for a player who made a living singing to die. It was surprising how cold Bob Hope was when he heard the news. They worked together for decades, and all he said was that he was a great partner. There was no honor or memory. It turned out that Hope had told his friends that he never really liked Crosby and sometimes hated him. It looked like their bond had never been about being brothers, but about business. After they got married, Crosby's second wife, Catherine, talked about their relationship. She said that he wrote her love letters that made her decide to quit her job and focus on home life. She was 30 years younger than him. Crosby liked her because she was his idea of the perfect wife. In fact, she taught him how to cook and decorate for him. Catherine said he looked up to strong women like his mother, who ran the family without any help. She said they were married because they loved each other, but she also said he wanted tradition, power, and a home that was centered around him.